Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Herman, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence, and the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston and director of the Independent Living Research Utilization Program at Tier Memorial Herman. We have a great guest for you today, and I'm anxious to introduce him, but I want to wait until after we ask a question, one that we'll answer before the end of today's program. The question is dwarfism covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act? We'll get to that before the end of the program, and we're eager to introduce our guest. We'll do so right after this short break. Please stay tuned to Focus on Abilities. This is Focus on Abilities. I'm your host, Lex Frieden, and our guest today is Bill Klein. Bill, glad to have you on Focus on Abilities.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you're the star of the little, I guess the co-star with your
I'm the
wife,
co-star.
Jen.
Yeah, I think Jen's top billing.
The little couple, and you have a business in Houston,
Yes.
Rocky and
Maggie's
Pet Shop.
Yep, in Rice Village.
In Rice Village.
Yes, sir.
And in addition to that, you have a small empire of other activities, including your consulting business and so on. But Bill, this is a very complex life. How do you keep everything managed?
Well, you know, I try to prioritize things. My family is first and foremost in my world, so I like to make sure that that the homestead is taken care of, that my wife is doing well, that she's taken care of at home, she's happy. My kids are getting what they need to make progress in this life, and then after that, I focus on work, and I focus on the things that need to be done for the day, and then we start looking at forward thinking, the week, the month, the year, and the next 3 years. Your
wife Jen recently had a scary episode. She was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. She had treatment, and how's she doing now?
Jen's doing great. She had to undergo a pretty big round of treatment, chemotherapy and surgery, but she's emerged on the other side, and she's headed back towards what we, I guess, would call normal.
Well, I mean, people have cancer, and they have treatments, and they're survivors.
Yeah.
And so she fit that category, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Given her short stature and her disability, do you have the sense that her treatment was any more stressful than for anybody else? I mean,
yeah, I think the stress of Jennifer's treatment was that there aren't a lot of little people in the country, let alone people that are diagnosed with cancer that are little people. And I don't know whether or not there's a lack of data or if it's some resistance to having cancer that little people possess. But nonetheless, not much in the way of documentation related to how to dose chemotherapy, how to treat patients with cancer that are that suffer or have dwarfism. Exists. And so Jen's oncologist had a tough time figuring out how to approach Jennifer as an adult that has the body weight of a child and has organ systems of an adult crammed into a smaller space, how you do it. So that was a topic of speculation through a number of weeks of treatment, and we had to adjust the medication to get optimal results.
Well, please give her my regards, and a lot of people praying for her and wishing her well.
No, I appreciate that. She does too.
And now you also have 2 children, and
yeah.
During the time that Jen was in treatment, you became mom, right?
I became Mr. Mom for a while. 2013 was a very busy year for us. We got our son William back in March. We went to China to pick him up. Will has a form of dwarfism called achondroplasia. It's the most common type of dwarfism. Happens in about 1 out of every 26,000 live births. In October, we traveled to India to finalize our adoption of our daughter Zoe. Zoe also likely has achondroplasia, but we haven't gotten her to a clinical geneticist yet. So that's upcoming after Jennifer completes treatment and gets the go-ahead to travel to Delaware, where our specialist is.
Bill, let me interrupt you. The adoption is a process that a lot of people engage in,
Sure.
and some people have a difficult time with the adoption process. Their credentials, their ability to care for a child and so on are questioned. Did you and Jen run into those kinds of issues given your disabilities?
Well, great question. We did run into a little bit of skepticism, more internal to our physicians, that we had to get things like clean bill of health from, sign off on a document saying that we're physically capable of taking care of a child, where they would be concerned about whether our physical limitations, as far as our stature was concerned, would preclude us from being able to take care of a child. But nowhere on there does it say that we aren't able to reach a glass or grab our child and run them out of a burning building any less capably than someone else could. So. So from our perspective, while there was some skepticism, because of our orthopedic history, there was really nothing that could, that they could delineate as being a checkbox that says that we're not qualified.
See, I think that shows some progress from the standpoint of social impressions, because years ago, probably the time you were in school, you couldn't have been a school teacher because you weren't able to reach the chalkboard, but you also couldn't pick the kids up if they fell down on the floor.
Sure. Yeah.
And now you've been able to cross that barrier, and
yeah,
the adoptions of really significant, I think, not only for you but for others who might want to adopt.
Well, the nice part about it is that with adoption these days, it's translated more to, how do you operate in your daily life? Do you have a life expectancy that's, fairly close to, what everybody else's is? And do you make enough money to support your children financially? Medical insurance and all that fun stuff. Jennifer and I were able to establish all those criteria, so there was no basis for them to turn us away. Now I know that if we volunteered too much information, I'm sure we can create plenty of skepticism to the point where someone would ask a question, and if not foreign, domestically. That we would become, in addition to our children, a burden of the state because of some problem that occurs, but no differently than anybody else that experiences a disability after they have children.
So you have 2 wonderful children now.
Yeah.
And your wife is on the mend.
Yeah.
Life is getting back to normal, but normal for you is still very complex. You have all these jobs.
Yeah, we try to keep things busy in the house. Yeah. I have a couple of career opportunities that I've developed myself after moving to Houston. I used to work in corporate America. Then I started a company back in 2005 with a partner, my former boss. We had that business for about 6 years together. I sold my interest to him after I'd moved down to Houston, and that was in 2011. I started up Rocky and Maggie's, the pet shop, in 2012. We opened up our doors in February of that year. So we have a retail presence and a website and all that fun stuff. So we do e-commerce, and that's been a great challenge that I had never done before. I had worked in retail once. I think it was selling propane to campers on a campground for a long weekend. That was my only retail experience. Since then, I've also incorporated a business that handles, consulting work. The business that I had sold to my partner did consulting for medical device industry. This is more of a small business focus, so I work with companies that are looking to build a business from scratch, and they're looking for advice on how to construct a business, how to do a business plan, and all that fun stuff.
Now, I presume in this process you're encouraging them to hire people with disabilities.
Absolutely. What's funny is before our economy took a downturn, the big push that I had, even in former companies, was that the disabled community is a huge resource that is untapped, where there's plenty of people that want to work, that are unemployed currently, and that are willing to do the job and probably do it better. But it's hard to convince people above you to embrace that as a policy that they need to instill. As a business owner, it's a different story. I don't discriminate disability or any other background for that matter. But that being said, the unemployment rates are still way too high.
Well, I mean, the last data indicates it's close to 80%
Yeah.
unemployment. It's the highest unemployment rate of any subset of the population in the United States. And that's not because, as you pointed out, people aren't qualified, and not because they're not motivated to work. It's probably many reasons why people with disabilities have a hard time getting jobs, not the least of which is attitudes.
Sure. Well, and we talked about it a couple of different times, but the reality is that if you hear it enough that you're not capable of doing something, or that you're turned away, you start believing it. If people place a label on you, well, it starts to define you, and then you start to believe it, and that has an effect on how you approach the next opportunity. Unfortunately, while, and I think, 1973 they started off with the Rehab Act, which focused on just folks that were working in federal programs or for the government. And that was a good start in the sense that it made accommodations for people that worked in federal offices. But ADA came along in 1990, and at that point it was not necessarily an affirmative action program for people with disabilities, but it prevented or encouraged people to stop discriminating people with disabilities. And yet today we're still looking at 80% of people with disabilities being unemployed, which means that who's paying for that? Taxpayers that are actually turning people away that want gainful employment. So rather than being a burden of the state, so to speak, they could be paying taxes and providing income to the state and to the Fed, rather than deriving an income from it. It's unfortunate that people have a stigma associated with dwarfism or with other types of disabilities that prevents them from taking that chance. You take a chance with any new hire.
But Bill, as a person with a disability, there are options. I mean, you can seek additional training, you can improve your own worth, so to speak, and you can get scholarships, you can get assistance from the state vocational rehabilitation and other agencies. So it's partly on the person with a disability to make themselves employable.
Absolutely.
Partly on the employer not to discriminate, to see the benefit of hiring somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. This isn't. From my perspective, the opportunity is one that an employer needs to make available, and an employee needs to seize. You can't expect to be provided a job that you're not qualified to perform. So you need to make yourself employable. You need to make yourself as attractive to the employer as possible, to know that they're making the right hire for their business. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to is are you a good fit for their company to do the job that they're looking to hire?
I want to come back to that point, but right now we're going to take a break. Bill, thanks for being here today. We'll be back, and please stay tuned. We'll be back with more Bill Klein on Focus on Abilities. Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, your host. We're here today with Bill Klein from The Little Couple. And Bill, do you ever get tired of being assigned a title associated with a program which one day will be in reruns?
Well, when we first started the program, it took us about 10 months to even engage the production company. They contacted us originally about following the events leading up to our wedding, which we turned down. We didn't think that it presented enough educational opportunity, and was more, for lack of a better word, sensational. Showing me getting a little tuxedo, Jennifer getting a little dress, and us having a big wedding, being two little people. That's not what we're about.
Well, your wedding, you wanted to have an intimate, personal affair, right?
Well, aside from the fact that we didn't need to have a microphone on my tuxedo, the reality is that most of the impetus for doing the show in the first place was to break down the barrier of little people being something that you watch on TV voyeuristically, but rather learn from. Learn that people with disabilities can do everything that you want to do. Maybe even inspire people with disabilities to do more than what they've been able to do.
Or even inspire people without disabilities who face different kinds of challenges.
God forbid. God forbid. But yeah, no, that is the goal, is to inspire, to level the playing field, if you will. And we were provided an opportunity to do that. And if I get to crack a few jokes along the way, maybe melt a few hearts in the audience because people enjoy the fact that I'm I guess I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic. Well, then so be it. I certainly don't get negative comments in public from ladies that tell me, I wish I could find a man like you, or, why doesn't my husband do what you do? And, of course I do get a couple of scowls from the husbands.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, why'd you do that? Can you stop buying flowers for your wife, please?
But you don't mind the notoriety.
Well, because it's been by and large positive, the notoriety has been beneficial to to my family, to our ability to understand where other people are coming from when it comes to disabilities and overcoming those things, and helps us reflect on what we've been able to achieve, what we still have to accomplish, and more particularly when we started doing the show, one of the things that Jennifer had always talked about was having a family, and our concern is the same concern that our parents had for us, which was, what's school going to be like for our two kids? What are they going to have to deal with that that was never fixed between the time that I entered kindergarten and the time that my son enters kindergarten? That's a fear that I still have to this day, because while we've been doing the show for a number of years, I don't believe that we've accomplished enough to disband those stigmas associated with our particular type of disability or disabilities in general. And I don't expect to, but I'd like to make it a little bit easier.
Well, Bill, you have many opportunities to affect opinions, but after 5 years on television, you must have said at some point something that offended somebody. I mean, you probably get a lot of fan mail, but have you ever got the opposite?
Yeah, not everybody's roses when we talk about their opinion of me, or the things that I may have done on the show. Jennifer's pretty much walked on water for the most part, but that's to be expected. She's about as close as you get. She's always looking outward, never reflecting about what she's accomplished, or patting herself on the back. It's one of those things where not everybody's going to look for the opportunity to pull you apart too. You're in
what opinion have you stated, Bill, that has, in your opinion, been the most controversial?
I don't know. I don't think there's been anything that's stuck out to where I've burned the bridge, so to speak. And I try to bite my tongue from time to time when I might have an opinion that I know I shouldn't voice. I try not to voice it. So if I've been caught saying something I shouldn't have, I probably should just apologize and let it go away quietly.
That's a good attitude. Bill, we talked a little bit about employment, the challenges that people face.
Yeah.
Advice that you would give people with disabilities who are struggling to find a job?
Well, like we discussed before, if you're out there looking for a job, you need to make yourself as employable as possible. You need to be willing to get whatever education or skills needed for a job that you're interested in developed in order to put your best foot forward. Once you get that job, though, you need to outshine, because ultimately that's how anybody progresses in their career. And from my experience, it was always asking for more. It was always showing up early and staying late and being willing to go that extra mile that accentuated my ability, my willingness to work at a job and to really embrace the opportunity. Do what other people aren't willing to do. Do it something that's outside of your, the realm of your job description.
But we talk about that, and we give this advice, and we give it to people with disabilities. Sometimes I wonder if we're not putting undue pressure on people who are just they should be judged on the basis of how they do their job, and if they do it as well as anybody else, that should be sufficient. And yet we're saying, and I've said it too, the way to really succeed is to do better than everybody else.
Well, there's two ways to look at this. There's the, if I can do it as well as anybody else can, I shouldn't be discriminated against. And that's absolutely accurate. But the reality of the situation is that most people with disabilities, when they are hired from a job, whether we are telling everybody this and they're all listening, or it's innate in somebody with a disability to do this, people with disabilities are more loyal to their employers. They work harder. They're more diligent. Sadly, they cost less, oftentimes, 40% or so. At the same time, these are the folks that cost less from the perspective of hiring. If you have turnover of 2 to 1 for a person without disabilities versus a person with, the reality is that all those hiring costs, which could be upwards of $40,000 for a headhunter and salaries and exits and severance and all those other fun things, those costs are pretty high. So hiring somebody with a disability is actually to the employer's advantage, even if they did the job equally as well. But oftentimes we do better.
Right. The evidence that you talked about is pretty well established, and yet people still have to prove themselves every day.
Yeah.
And I think the motivation is important for any person. People without disabilities, I think, take things for granted that we don't, and sometimes we have to solve problems that other people don't have. But to say that sort of obviates the fact that everybody has challenges in their lives.
Sure. I think it would be naive for anyone to assume that the person sitting next to you that was able to ride their bike to work has it any easier than you do. I've met plenty of people that their disability isn't necessarily physical. It might not be mental. It might be more emotional. There's things that are, that you don't see. It's not on the outside. And we have to respect the fact that it's not always easy for people to achieve the same things. That being said, a physical disability, unfortunately, you can't hide the same way as some of those others. And so people make judgments prior to you actually getting to work. There are things that might take you longer. For me, I have to spend more on clothing than most people do. Just by getting the same salary and being required to wear a suit to work means that I'm in the hole by thousands of dollars each year to show up to work and wear the same, blue blazer and, yellow tie and khaki pants.
That's a good point. Bill, the challenges we face sometimes are unpredictable. And I know you travel a lot internationally. International travelers run into things they don't expect to run into.
Sure.
You've dealt with some challenges like that. What's your advice to people about problem solving? I mean, do you have an approach, a strategy, a paradigm that you use?
Well, particularly with international travel, because in the States we've done a lot to level the playing field. So access for people with disabilities is a little bit more accessible. When you go to a foreign country, number one, you got to study up on where you're going. Do the research, try and scout places that you'll want to go. You have to be willing to embrace the fact that they're behind. In certain instances, the places you're going to just don't have the wherewithal or the inclination to accommodate people. There are places that we've been to where people that are short in stature are mocked and wouldn't be taken seriously no matter how much you fought.
But the solution is just to analyze the situation in real time and then react as well as you can, right?
Yeah, and ultimately you can't let it affect your outlook towards the place that you're going to. We went to China where there's a lot of places where you have to step over a threshold. It's a foot high, and a foot high on me is above my knee and just below my special area. That's not pleasant to do every time you want to walk in and out of a building, but nonetheless, it's something that you just have to deal with. If you want to get inside, you're not going to change legislation in the People's Republic of China to the point where they start paving the way for you to be able to have access to.
But Bill, what do you do when somebody sees you having a challenge like that and reaches over, wants to pick you up like a child?
Well, it's happened before. I wouldn't advise picking me up. I'm more than a bag of cement. But my wife and I have both experienced that, excitement or enthusiasm to help us over an obstacle.
You just politely excuse them?
Yeah, you do. You politely excuse them as best you can. On a very rare occasion, I've asked for help in situations where it was more important for me to get to my objective than it was to do it on my own.
But it's better for people to ask you if you'd like help
Asking
rather than
is
just
the key.
grab, right?
Yeah, asking is a lot more polite. I don't know anybody that would be okay with you grabbing their shoulder without an invitation. You might think that their intentions are something other than
And
benevolent.
you must have been patted on the head at least once.
Yeah, worst time I was patted on the head was in a bathroom after I saw a man use a urinal and not
Oh
wash
my
his hands.
God. We don't need to go any further. So, Bill, this has been really engaging, and I really appreciate the time you've taken here with us today. At the beginning of the show, I asked a question, and that is dwarfism covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act? The answer to that clearly is yes.
Yes, dwarfism is covered by the ADA. Actually, it's a congenital condition for skeletal dysplasias that are automatically blanketly covered by the ADA. So that, along with the physical disabilities that are apparent with skeletal dysplasia, it provides or affords opportunities for people with disabilities to have accommodations at work and home and other
And
places.
hopefully it's put light switches within reach and elevator buttons within reach, and at least if it hasn't, it's given you some kind of adaptive aid that will allow you to push the button, right?
Yeah, the ADA has been great. It's certainly not the end-all be-all. I think George Bush, whom you helped put the ADA together with, said it at one of the anniversaries recently that the ADA has been a great piece of legislation, but that it's not done.
It's true.
And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of different disabilities, and you can't do it with one piece of legislation to address it all. But there needs to be a way to open up the door so that people with different types of disabilities can address their concerns with a more streamlined approach, so that it's not as prohibitive.
Okay. Bill, again, thank you for being our guest today.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank all of you for watching Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, and this is HTV. I want to thank all the producers and directors at HTV, and I want to welcome you back again to the next Focus on Abilities. Please join us again, and have a great day.
Focus on Abilities was brought to you by Tier Memorial Hermann, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence, and the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.